With the man I should have chosen? Thomas pulled her into his arms then, holding her close as she wept against his chest. He breathed in the scent of her hair, felt the warmth of her body, and marveled that she was real, that she was here. Never married, he confessed. Never loved anyone else. I built my life around the memory of one perfect summer and the woman who got away. She pulled back to look at him, her hands framing his face. We're older now, changed. Are you sure you could love the woman I've become? In answer, he kissed her, soft and gentle at first, then with all the passion of 15 years of longing. She melted against him, her arms wrapping around his neck, and for a moment they were young again, full of dreams and possibilities. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. I want to marry you, Thomas said. Day, if you'll have me. We've lost enough time, yes, she whispered. It's 1,000 times. Yes. But even as she spoke, the sound of approaching horses reached their ears. Thomas tensed, instinctively moving to shield Maria, but she caught his arm. Wait, she said. Look. Riding toward them was Joseph Running Bear, no longer alone, but accompanied by a figure that made Maria gasp. An elderly Mexican man in fine clothes, his face lined with age and regret. Don Alejandro, Maria breathed. Her adoptive father dismounted slowly, his proud bearing unchanged despite his years. He approached them with measured steps, his eyes fixed on Maria. Mia, he said. Softly, my daughter. You called me daughter once before, Maria replied, her voice steady, despite the pain in it. Before you destroyed my happiness with lies. Don Alejandro's shoulders sagged. I thought I was protecting you both. The times were dangerous for mixed couples, I believed. I believed I was saving you from a life of hardship and persecution. We're saving your own pride, Maria said, but without the anger Thomas expected. You couldn't bear the thought of your adopted daughter loving a poor cowboy. Yes, the old man admitted. And I have regretted it every day since. When Valdez died and I saw your grief not for him, but for the life you'd lost, I knew the magnitude of my mistake. I've spent 5 years trying to find Thomas McKenna, to undo what I had done. He turned to Thomas, his eyes wet with unshed tears. I wronged you both. I stole 15 years from 2 people who loved each other truly and deeply. I come now to ask your forgiveness and to offer what restitution I can. He gestured to Joseph, who produced a leather satchel from his saddlebags. This contains the deed to Rancho Esperanza, my land in the valley to the south. 10,000 acres of good grazing land, with a house worthy of my daughter and the man she chooses to marry. It is my wedding gift to you both, if you will accept it. Thomas stared at the offered deed, overwhelmed. From poverty to prosperity in a single day, all because he'd given water to a wounded stranger. There's more, Don Alejandro continued. I've spoken with the territorial governor. There will be no trouble from the authorities about your relationship with the tribes. Joseph's people and my own vaqueros will work together to protect your lands from those who would cause trouble. Maria looked at Thomas, her eyes shining with hope and love. What do you say, mi amor? Shall we build the life we dreamed of, even if it comes 15 years late? Thomas took her hands in his, marveling at how perfectly they fit together, as if no time had passed at all. The timing doesn't matter, he said. Love isn't about when it happens. It's about it happening at all. Joseph stepped forward, a rare smile on his weathered face. Then let us make this official. I am authorized to perform marriage ceremonies under both tribal law and territorial law. We can have a wedding right here, right now, in the place where your love story began. And so, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, painting the old mission, walls gold and amber, Thomas McKenna and Maria Delgado mourning, pledged their love to each other once more. This time, no lies or fears could separate them. Joseph Running Bear spoke the words of binding in both English and Comanche, while Don Alejandro wept openly for the years he'd cost them. The wedding was witnessed by warriors from 7 tribes and blessed by the morning sky that had watched over their love story from the beginning. After the ceremony, as they stood together in the mission doorway, Maria rested her head against Thomas's shoulder. Do you think we can be truly happy after so much loss? She asked. Thomas tightened his arms around her, looking out at the vast landscape that stretched before them, their land now, their future. I think happiness isn't about avoiding loss, he said. It's about finding each other again after we've been lost. It's about choosing love even when it seems impossible. She tilted her face up to his, and he saw in her eyes the same fierce love. That had sustained them both through 15 years of separation. Then let's choose love, she whispered. That day and every day after, they kissed. As the sun reached its zenith, two souls finally reunited under the endless western sky. Around them, the desert bloomed with wildflowers, as if the land itself was celebrating their long-awaited union. In the distance, cattle grazed on land that would be their home, while representatives of 7 tribes and 1 proud Mexican father made their way back to their own people, carrying the story of how kindness to a stranger had healed old wounds and made possible the love story that had waited 15 years for its proper ending. That evening, as Thomas and Maria rode toward their new ranch house, she asked him about the choice he'd made to help Joseph Running Bear. Did you know who he was when you gave him water? Thomas considered the question, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. No, I just saw a man who needed help. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the best things in life come not from planning or scheming, but from simple kindness offered to strangers. Maria smiled, her hand finding his across the space between their horses. Like the kindness you showed a Spanish girl at a dance 15 years ago, when you could have chosen any of the prettier, richer girls there. You were the most beautiful woman in the room, Thomas protested. I was the outsider, the adopted daughter trying to fit in where she didn't belong. You saw something in me worth loving. They rode on in comfortable silence, the sound of their horses' hooves beating a rhythm like a heart. Behind them, the old mission grew small in the distance, its purpose finally fulfilled. Ahead lay their new life, built on the foundation of a love that had survived separation, betrayal, and the harsh test of time. As they crested the hill that looked down on their new home, Maria pulled her horse to a stop. The ranch house stood below them, warm light glowing in its windows, smoke rising from the chimney where their new life would begin. No more waiting, she said, her voice full of quiet joy. No more waiting, Thomas agreed, and together they rode. Down toward home. Toward the love that had finally found its way back to itself under the vast and forgiving western sky. Their story would be told around campfires for generations to come. The tale of the poor rancher who gave water to a wounded stranger and found his heart's desire in return. But more than that, it would be remembered as proof that true love, once kindled, never truly dies. It only waits, patient as the desert, for the right moment to bloom again. The dust swirled around Thomas McKenna's boots as he knelt beside the wounded man, his weathered hands trembling as he lifted the canteen to parched lips. The stranger's dark eyes flickered open, meeting Thomas's gaze with a mixture of pain and surprise. Blood seeped through the makeshift bandage around the man's shoulder, and his breathing came in shallow gasps. Easy now, Thomas whispered, his voice hoarse from years of calling cattle across the endless prairie. You're safe. The wounded man was clearly native, his long black hair braided with leather and beads, his clothing torn but bearing the intricate patterns Thomas had seen in trading posts. In these parts, helping a wounded Indian could mean trouble with the local ranchers, maybe even the cavalry. But Thomas McKenna had never been one to let a man die for want of water. As the stranger drank, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that those eyes seemed familiar. Something about the sharp cheekbones, the proud line of the jaw, stirred a memory he'd buried deep. But that was impossible. The past was dead and gone, like everything else he'd once loved. Can you ride? Thomas asked, glancing toward the horizon. Where dust clouds suggested approaching riders, the man nodded weakly. I must reach my people. Thomas helped him to his horse, a magnificent painted stallion that had been grazing nearby. As the wounded stranger mounted, he looked down at Thomas with an expression of deep gratitude. You have given me life when you could have taken it, he said in accented English. I will not forget. Thomas watched him ride away into the amber light of evening, disappearing like a ghost into the vast landscape. He stood there long after the hoofbeats faded, an inexplicable ache growing in his chest. The loneliness of his small ranch seemed to press in around him like the approaching darkness. That night, Thomas sat on his porch, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. His cattle moved restlessly in the distance, sensing something. In the air, he thought about the stranger's eyes, the way they'd seemed to look right through him to something deeper. It reminded him of another pair of eyes, ones he'd tried to forget for 15 long years. Maria, the name still cut through him like a blade. Maria Delgado, the daughter of a Spanish landowner who'd stolen his heart when he was nothing but a young ranch hand with dreams bigger than his empty pockets. She'd been promised to another, a wealthy merchant from San Antonio. But for one golden summer, they'd loved each other with the fierce passion of youth. He'd asked her to run away with him, to build something new in the territories where no one knew their names. She'd said yes, tears streaming down her beautiful face as she promised to meet him at the old mission at dawn. But when the sun rose, Thomas had waited alone. Her father found him there 3 hours later, flanked by armed men. "She's gone, Don," Alejandro had said, his voice cold as winter wind. "Married yesterday to Señor Valdez. Forget her name, boy. Forget her face. She's dead to you now." Thomas had ridden north that very day, his heart as broken as his pride. He'd never looked back, never tried to find her. What was the point? She'd made her choice. Now, 15 years later, he owned a small ranch that barely kept him fed, surrounded by endless sky and endless solitude. He'd never married, never loved again. Some wounds he'd learned, never fully healed. A sound in the distance broke through his memories, the thunder of many horses approaching. Thomas stood, his hand instinctively moving to the rifle beside his chair. In the moonlight, he could see riders cresting the hill more than he could count. His heart hammered against his ribs as they drew closer, but they didn't come with weapons drawn. Instead, they approached slowly, respectfully, like a procession. At their head rode the wounded man from earlier, now sitting tall and proud in his saddle. Behind him came warriors from what looked like different tribes Thomas could tell by the varying styles of dress and war paint. The wounded man raised his hand, and the entire group came to a halt just outside Thomas's fence. "Thomas McKenna," the man called out, his voice carrying clearly across the night air. "I am Joseph Running, Bear, son of Chief White Eagle of the Comanche, nephew to Chief Red Hawk of the Apache, brother by marriage to chiefs of 5 other tribes." Thomas's blood turned to ice water. He'd saved not just any wounded traveler, but a man connected to 7 different tribes. In these times of tension between settlers and natives, such connections could mean the difference between peace and war. "I told them of your kindness," Joseph continued. "How you gave water to an enemy when you could have let him die. How you risked your own safety to help a stranger." The other riders began to move, but not in attack formation. Instead, they were bringing forward something that made Thomas's eyes widen in disbelief. Cattle. Dozens of them. More than his ranch had ever seen. "We bring gifts," Joseph announced. 100 head of the finest cattle, taken from the herds of those who would drive us from our lands. We give them to the white man who showed mercy when mercy was not expected. Thomas stepped forward, overwhelmed. I can't accept this. I don't have the land to support so many cattle." Joseph smiled, the first time Thomas had seen warmth in his stern features. "Then perhaps it is time to expand your lands. There is a valley 2 miles north, with good grass and a clear stream. It belongs to no one now. The tribes have agreed it is yours if you will have it." The generosity was staggering, but Thomas sensed there was more to this than simple gratitude. "Why?" he asked. "Why so much for so little?" Joseph's expression grew serious. "Because 15 years ago, my sister was cast out from her family for refusing to betray a love that crossed the boundaries of blood and culture. She has wandered ever since, neither fully Spanish nor Indian, belonging nowhere. Yesterday, when you saved my life, you proved that kindness can bridge any divide." Thomas's world tilted on its axis. "Your sister?" Maria Delgado was her Spanish name, given to her when she was adopted by Don Alejandro as a child after Comanche raiders killed her birth family. Her true name is Morning Star. She is my blood sister, and she has never stopped loving the cowboy who waited for her at the mission. The night air seemed to leave Thomas's lungs in a rush. What happened? Why didn't she come? Eyes held deep sadness. Her Spanish father threatened to hunt you down and kill you if she ran away. He told her you were already dead, shot while fleeing like a coward. She believed him and went through with the marriage to protect your memory. But when her husband died 5 years later, she learned the truth. You lived, and she had been played for a fool. Thomas sank into his porch chair, the weight of 15 years of misunderstanding crushing down on him. Where is she now? Has been searching for you? When word came of your kindness to me, she rode hard to reach this place. She waits now at the old mission, afraid to come closer, afraid you will not forgive her for the choice she made. The words hit Thomas like physical blows. Maria was alive. She was here. Loved him all along. I have to go to her, he said. Standing abruptly, Joseph held up a hand. The sunrise comes in for hours. She will wait until then, as she waited 15 years ago. This time she hopes you will both be there when the sun rises. The next hours passed like centuries. Thomas paced his small house, his mind reeling with questions and emotions he'd thought long buried. Would she still love him? Could they bridge the gap of 15 years and all the pain between them? As the first hint of dawn painted the eastern sky, Thomas saddled his horse and rode toward the old mission. His heart pounded with each hoofbeat, fear and hope warring in his chest. The mission stood silhouetted against the growing light, its crumbling walls holding so many memories. She was there. Maria sat on the stone steps, where he'd waited all those years ago. Her head bowed, her long dark hair touched with silver now, but still beautiful. She wore a simple riding dress, and beside her sat a small bundle, her worldly possessions. He realized Thomas dismounted slowly, his legs unsteady. She looked up at the sound, and their eyes met across the 15 years that had separated them. She was older, lines of sorrow marking her face, but she was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Her dark eyes filled with tears as she stood, her hands trembling at her sides. Thomas, she whispered, her voice carrying all the love and pain of the years between them. Maria took a step toward her, then another, until they were close, enough to touch. I waited. I waited until the sun was high, and then I waited some more. I know. Tears spilled down her cheeks.
Ow.
I was dressed, ready to run away with you. But Father said, he said if I left, he would hunt you down and kill you. He showed me men with guns, said they were already riding to find you. I couldn't let you die for loving me. Thomas reached out, his calloused fingers touching her face with infinite gentleness. And when you learned the truth, I tried to find you. I rode from town to town, asking after Thomas McKenna. Some said you'd died in the war, others said you'd gone to California. I never stopped looking, never stopped hoping. They stood there as the sun rose higher, drinking in the sight of each other, afraid to believe this moment was real. The marriage. Thomas said, the words difficult to speak, were you? Did he treat you well? Maria's eyes darkened. Valdez was not cruel, but he was not you. I did my duty as a wife, but my heart was always in this place, on this morning.